super important for this event, given the current context. The representative, Halem Desir, will announce the joint declaration that we are going to launch today, now, during this panel, thanks to your initiatives and thanks to your being here with us today. So without further ado, Halem Desir.
Thank you. Thank you, Jen. So together with Mihailo, who is the chief editor from VST, we will present this joint declaration that we propose that the participants to the conference could adopt now in solidarity to Oliveira. So declaration by participants of the OSCE Southeast Europe Conference on the shooting of journalist Oliveira Lakic. We, the participants of the OSCE Southeast Europe Conference, which is taking place in Struga on 10th and 11th May 2018, strongly condemned the shooting of Oliveira Lakic, an investigative journalist with the Vijesti newspaper in Montenegro, on the evening of 8th May 2018. We send a strong message of support and solidarity to Oliveira Lakic, to the employees of Vijesti, and to all journalists and media workers facing attacks, threats, intimidation in Montenegro and in the region of Southeast Europe. We recall that this incident was not an isolated occurrence. Mrs. Lakic received horrible threats and attacks in 2011, was beaten 6 years ago, and there have been 25 attacks and threats against Vijesti journalists, media workers, and property since 2007. We underline that many journalists and media workers across the Southeast region face attacks, including physical and online threats and intimidations on a regular basis. Yet, too often, there has been impunity, and too many of the perpetrators of the crimes against journalists and media workers in the region have never been brought to justice. We note that a criminal investigation into the shooting of Mrs. Lakic has been opened by the state authorities, and that political leaders, notably the President, the Prime Minister, and the Speaker of the Parliament, have publicly condemned the attack. We call on the state authorities of Montenegro to ensure that the investigation into the shooting of Mrs. Lakic is independent, effective, and speedy, and that the perpetrators of the attack, including its masterminds, are brought to justice. Politicians and public officials should not create a hostile environment for the media through their statements and action. They must demonstrate a higher level of tolerance for critical journalism and support a plurality of voices and opinions in a society. All state and non-state actors should recognize that any attack on a journalist not only violates the rights of the journalist involved, but also undermines the public's right to know, the rule of law, and democracy itself. So, I propose that, except if there is an opposition to this declaration, we can adopt it, send it to Oliveira Lakic, send it to the authority of Montenegro, and make it public to the press in Montenegro and in the region. If you agree, we can adopt it. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Dear colleagues, good afternoon. I would like first to strongly support the statement which Mr. Desir and Mikhail Jovovic from VST have just read. And I would like to use the opportunity on my behalf and on behalf of the EBU, European Broadcasting Union Director General Noel Curran, to strongly condemn the attack of the Montenegrin journalist of daily VST, Oliveira Lakic. This is absolutely unacceptable, and we should be adamant and resolute in our condemnation, because attacks on journalists are attacks on the fundamental freedoms and attack on our democracy. I would like to thank the organizers for organizing this important event in the region and for inviting us to participate. The topic of our panel today is strengthening of public service media. In our discussion, we will try to be constructive and acknowledge the challenges, but also to look ahead and to look for the way out. Media today, including public service media, are facing an increasing complexity characterized by internationalization, market consolidation, newcomers, plethora of platforms and devices, fragmentation, changing consumption trends, data algorithms, regulation, etc. We are witnessing digital disruption and continuously expanding matrix of services where media outlets compete for the time and the attention of the public. Visibility, findability, and relevance become more challenging. New, bigger, and highly diversified players have fully entered the global audiovisual market and disrupted the competitive environment all over the European Broadcasting Union area. Public service media hold a significant share of the European broadcasting market, both in terms of audience and revenues. According to the data from the European Audiovisual Observatory, public service media revenues accounted for 28% in all 2015 revenues in the EU audiovisual sector. Public service media radio achieved 40% average market share, TV channels 24 share in the EBU area. For most European citizens, public service media radio and television services remain essential components of their audiovisual environments. However, two new categories of competitors should be taken into account for a better picture of the current competitive environment faced by public service media. These are the telecom operators, which are mainly European groups, and the internet giants, mostly in the United States. The top 5 US media conglomerates, Comcast, Walt Disney, Time Warner, 20th Century Fox, Viacom, have experienced a strong and regular growth in their revenues in the past few years. In 2016, the top groups earned 185 billion euro, which is 5 times bigger than all 64 public service media in Europe. The top 5 telecom operators, Deutsche Telekom, Vodafone, Telefonica, Orange, and British Telecom, total combined turnover for 2016 was 253 billion euro, which is 7 times of the total EBU public service media funding. Altogether, in 2016, the top 5 internet giants, Apple, Amazon, Alphabet, Facebook, and Netflix, earned 432 billion euros, which is 12 times the total funding of 64 public service media organizations. So internet giants are not only disrupting the European media markets, but also the European economies. In addition to these global challenges in public service media in Europe, there are not only challenges in the eastern part, but also increasingly in the Western Europe. The public service media are under increased financial and political pressures. This March, we have had a referendum in Switzerland about the funding of public service media. Thanks God, the turnout was very positive and very affirmative, but this was a scary experience. The Danish public service broadcaster is also under pressure of significant cut of their budget of about 20%. The Austrian public service media is under increased political pressure. In Lithuania, the parliament created an investigative commission to investigate the financial operations of public service media. On the other hand, we see more than ever the need for trusted, well-checked and verified professional information and the need for credible and independent public service media. People went on the streets to protest against the verbal attacks of the Czech president against the Czech TV. In Southeastern Europe, on the top of all these developments and challenges, we have to add one more challenge. This is the unfinished and continuing real transformation from state-owned broadcasters into public service media. The immediate public service media challenges are becoming independence, resources, structure, strategies, and talents. I have the privilege today to introduce our panels. Next to me is Dr. Sandra Bašić-Hrvatin, professor at the University of Primorsk and member of the editorial board of Media Watch. We all actually know Professor Hrvatin because she has helped almost all lawmakers here in the region in developing their laws. Okay. Lutfi Dervishi is an analyst for RTSH. He hosts the show Perbel, or Opposite. He used to be a lecturer at the University of Tirana. He was executive director in Transparency International in Albania and worked with the Albania Media Institute. He is a contributing editor and also author of columns. Senada Čumurović is Assistant to Director General of BHRT. She coordinates the work of Multimedia Desk and works on larger projects on the radio, TV, and the web. Next to me is Migena Gorenza, the editor at MTV2, the channel for minorities. She has been working for MRTV since the beginning of 1999, as editor-in-chief since 2008. Mufayo Limani is a deputy director of general of RTK. He was a journalist and editor at the weekly magazine Zeri. He has been working for RTK since 2001 and has held various editorial and managerial positions. Adriana Kadia is the first female director general of radio and television at Montenegro. She has been working for the media industry since 1995. She produced and hosted numerous primetime shows before becoming TV director of Montenegro, and then she became a DG since 2017. I would start my questions with Dr. Sandra Basic-Hrvatin. You have helped most of our lawmakers in the region to develop their laws. For years we hide behind the formulation. We have good laws, but we fail in the implementation. Looking at the global challenges and trends, we do not have time more to waste. We have to change, and we have to change really fast, because otherwise it would be too late. Let's discuss today the three major challenges of public service media, and these are, I think all of us would agree, these are independence, funding, and reforms. The Council of Europe have very clear standards. The EBU has adopted 6 core values, which are independence, diversity, universality, accountability, innovation, and excellence. However, there is a visible trend for abolishing the licensing fee. The rationale behind is the difficult financial situation and the reluctance of people to pay the license fee. Politicians gladly use it, of course, because it gives them populist advantages, especially in the pre-election campaigns. So how do you see the conflict between the ideal and the reality and the practice?
Thank you, Radka. I will just have a short statement at the beginning. I fully support the statement which was read before, but I would also add something for me also important. My, I don't know, my support for brave women from this region, from Montenegro, not just Olivera, but Milka from Macedonia, from Serbia, from Kosovo, from all these countries. Because don't forget, these women are attacked viciously. They are attacked not because only what they do, but because who they are, meaning the female, the woman. And I think solidarity in this issue means a political struggle, daily political struggle. So we have to find some mechanism, not just for the statement, but daily support for all the journalists who are under threat. In Slovenia, we don't have journalists who accept the case with Miro Petek. This case was never resolved. And Miro Petek left the journalism, and he thought that it would be much more easier to find the perpetrators of his attack as parliamentarians, as MP. Unfortunately, it didn't help. So after 20 years, we still don't know who ordered his beating. But there is another way how you can attack journalists who are critical to the government, and that's that you can forbid them to work. So I have 2 of my dearest colleagues who cannot work in Slovenia. They cannot apply for any job in Slovenia because they were critical to the government, so they cannot practice journalism. One of them is working in Germany, and the other one is working in Croatia. So the instruments or mechanisms which political elites and those with power are using against journalism are very wide. And if you want to fight them, you need a broad movement. So for me, solidarity is the fight for freedom of expression. Now for your question. Unfortunately, the law is not the only important thing to have. And I can follow in the region, and especially in my country, which is a very interesting case, that in 2006 we have a first referendum about the law on public service media. Then after a few years we have a second referendum, and both ideas of the ruling coalitions to change the law to reform public service media failed. And now, after 10 years, we have the law which was passed by the right government. We have 3 center-left governments who didn't have political will or didn't have enough power to change the law. So when you are saying about license fee, I think this is directly linked to populism. So most the populist party in Europe are putting in their political agenda that they will abolish license fee. Like the public service media is for them probably the worst enemy, public enemy #1. So you have to fight them, and the only way how they know how to fight is to abolish some ideas, some principles which were established 100 years ago. So on the other hand, we are talking about public service media like we are inventing something new. I think for last 100 years, nothing changed. I mean, the idea of public service media is the most inventive idea in communication which we as a human society invented. And I think that public service media are important today like any other public good, like clean water, like, I don't know, like clean air, everything. So we have to fight. I think the political struggle for the journalism is also political struggle for the public service media, genuine public service media. And now regarding financing, as you go through the documents passed by European Commission, I'm stressing European Commission because European Parliament, they have a different agenda. For the years, European Parliament are warning European Commission that we have in European Union problem with diversity, with pluralism, with political pressures and everything. The only document European Commission passed in last years regarding the public service media is communication about state aid. And that's the way how the European Commission looks at the media, only as the market mechanism and nothing about their important role in communication. So I'm not preferring one or the other model. I like when the public service media are financed through the license fee, because this is the direct connection with public. So you know who is paying you, and you know who is actually the subject and object of your responsibility and accountability. But on the other hand, I don't like this idea that everything coming from the state money is wrong. I mean, what is state money? It's not money which is produced by state. I mean, sometimes the state print money in different ways, but most of the money from public sources is the money we paid as citizens through taxes and everything else. So I'm not like completely against the idea that they can be also financed through the public money, like from the budget, state budget and things, but there should be very strong safeguards against using this financing as political pressure. And the last thing, if I can say this, because I know all this legislation, I heard today, and you will tell me if it's right, that Kosovo is going to copy-paste Slovenian law. Unfortunately, I can tell you first-handed that this is a bad law. It's bad in Slovenia, and in Kosovo it will be a disaster. So if you need a new legislation, sit down, have a huge discussion, and try to find a model who will be reasonable, doable in Kosovo society, and don't copy a Slovene model. That's my word.
Thank you, Sandra. Actually, you are reading my thoughts. because I was exactly going to give the floor to Mufail Limani to tell us how he sees the proposed amendments in the new law. Just for the audience to know, there are three of the countries where their preparations, their legal preparations in work. In Macedonia, there will be legal changes. There will be legal changes in Montenegro, and there are also prepared legal changes in Kosovo. Apparently, the international community is pushing for preserving the license fee. However, I understand that the top management of RTK believes that this is not feasible, and they advocate for funding from the budget. So, Mufail, please let us know, what do you think?
Well, every country is another story and another thing, but of course our parliamentarians, the Commission for Media and other things, when they decided to change the law of RTK, which was in procedure last 3 years, we always have this kind of processing new law, and now Parliament is over, new government and new drafts. The last draft is really it's from Slovenia. We told them that it's not possible. We will not ever be, and we don't want to be, and we are not Slovenia. We have our specifics, we have our needs, we have our situation, we have, how to say, also our specific ethnic consideration, political consideration with minorities, with our history, with our circumstances. We can, it's not bad to have as a model to take, but not copy-paste. Copy-paste, we are against. We were, from the beginning, we were against translating the law and pushing to vote in the parliament to say this is okay, European. Kosovo has this experience with the license fee, and that was not bad. But I believe the lawmakers in the first period when we have this license fee had made mistakes or had made a situation with, how to say, legal vacuums according to how many TV can have one person, one family, how many is for the power. And they decided in one moment to cut off, to suspend the license fee. The Constitutional Court decides to take out us from the license fee, and we was in that time forced to find solution to the budget. In principle, in our discussions, and in my opinion also, we are not, we do not have, how to say, 100% for or against license fee or budget, because all solutions have this kind of difficulty because we have this experience with license fee and experience with budget. With license fee is more moral, more ethical to have money from the people who is paying you, because this is more creating, how to say, more educational approach for us who work in RTK and toward our public. From state budget, also we are not completely against it, because this is also our money. This is also money of our society. And when you have the situation like we had, you remember maybe 0.7% of the budget, and when we have this kind of strict budget, which is not political budget, which is not going, will go every year to every government to vote yes or no or abstain or make big discussion, political discussion, which is normal with politicians, but this is in a situation where that is not a decision of parliament, because they will only have to obey to the law. This is not a problem for us. But with the state budget, we have this kind of, in the name of transparency, politicians can make, they are also smart people, not only journalists. And they make us, for example, every 3 months we have to report in the parliament with politicians. They are politicians, they are not professionally parliamentary politicians, political parties, every cent. This is not bad in principle, but you have a situation and you have to say you have to work always in defense with politicians, with any kind of question and so on. So we are open for both solutions. We are not against license fee, we are not against state budget, with the condition that the law be articulated, be, how to say, more defendable if someone complains tomorrow because he will feel hurt or whatever. This is for start, what I have to say.
Thank you, Mufayo. Then we move to the other country which is envisaging legal changes, but actually here in our host country they have abolished the license fee already last year. And they have 0.7 from the budget. And because we are in a pluralistic society, I think that Migena is going to speak in Albanian, so prepare your headphones. And Migena, please let us know what are your thoughts about.
Radio Television Macedonia until last year functioned by the money gathered from the citizens. In fact, by the money that couldn't be collected directly from the payment of the citizens, because unfortunately there was a campaign, media starting from now governing party against the license fee, radio diffusion of citizens. At the end, the license fee was removed, abolished. It was about 3 years a month, and believe me, personally, I think none of the families in Macedonia didn't become rich just for not paying the taxes of public. In Macedonia, there's a saying, proverb. I don't know whether it's true or not, but we feel for what to pay. You are for nothing. You are not worth for nothing. Shortly, I'd like to make a presentation. What is the radio television? It is the clearest mirror of the multi-ethnic state. We have a state where majority are Macedonians, MTV1. Now we have also a state with 6 ethnicities recognized by the constitution, MTV2. This is the way the state functions. This is the way that public television. As the state functions, also the MTV1 and 2 actions that way. Majority of this state ethnic, they have all the criteria for creating qualitative program. MTV2 represent the minorities with the minorities of the rights. Though according to the constitution, our rights should be equal. Albanians that make the majority of these ethnic minorities. As all the Albanians of this country, they're complaining of not completing this program needs, for not having the conditions as our colleagues of MTV1. Now, let's be clear, we do the same job. We have 5 other ethnicities also are part of the minority ethnicity in this country, and the worst page of this story is the Roma reduction. Just like the Roma community joins the Roma reduction works for 3 years only with 1 employed. Also, we made requests at least to have 3 workers of the Roma community in the public. They also have only 1 member employed. In this kind of condition, we cannot offer the quality that the citizens or watchers demand. All we wanted is to find the possibility to gather radio diffusion taxes, suggesting citizens that the 3 euros payment is a payment for a public service raised on the highest level of professionalism, an independent television aside from the daily political needs, so that it would offer them a program that they pay for. I'm not against payment from the budget also. At the end, it's known the budget is filled by our money. But I am for an option that in MTV, yesterday we received our salary. Actually, the government released our payment, and this is what worries me personally. The statement, the government is not the one who pays my salary. Because the government has some requests that I have to fulfill. I expect that from the budget optimal minimum of 1%, and I believe that in Macedonia, the politics, also the citizens, ordinary citizens, that radio television Macedonia is not a simple television just like public television. It's a television that transmits on 5 television programs, 4 radio programs. It's a television that transmits 6 languages and also 8 languages on the radio stations. This is the highest values of citizens of Macedonia. As soon as we solve this or achieve this, we will solve other problems.
Limit and has to serve all segments of the society, and for this it needs an adequate funding. I would like to move to Lutfi, because Albania is the only country now among the rest which is still keeping the license fee, and it could be actually a good model even for some Western countries, but you have also complaints, but they are of a different nature. So, Lutfi.
Thank you, Radka. If you allow me, I have a question for you all. Does anybody watch public service media in their own country? Okay. Well, that explains the situation that the public service media is. If you ask how is the public service media in Albania, with one word I would say good. But if you would ask me with 2 words, I would say not good. I mean, why it is good now? It is good because it's the biggest TV station with 900 employees. It's not good because they are not the smartest people in the town. It is good because it has the biggest budget, 18 million euros per year. It's not so good because up to 45% of that budget is eaten up by digitalization process. It is good because now it has a platform with 12 channels. It's not good because it's 15 years late. Private competitors have done this exercise 2003. It's good because public service now has a strategy in paper. It's not so good because it is not backed up with a financial sheet. It's good because we have, for the very first time, the editorial standards, which are approved and discussed. It's not good because mostly they have remained in the paper. It's good because we started watching now in the public service investigative pieces. It's not good because it's too little and too late. The others have done that thing decades ago. The OSCE ODIHR report for the last elections, which is the final judge on internal disputes in Albania, this said that the public service was good because it had a balanced approach during the election. It's not so good because you mean balancing left and right, which does not have any sense in the real meaning of what is left and what is right. It is good now because it has, I think, the best app in the region and beyond It's called Ratashotani, RTSHTANI, and you can watch 12 channels. You can watch the programs that you've missed up to 3 days. It's not so good because 8 of these channels are backed only with archive materials, and the future it's a little bit a question mark. It's good because now we are implementing the new technology. But we have seen that the new technology doesn't solve automatically the old challenges. It's good because we have new logo, new layout. It's not so good because it's still old mentality. And this transformation from following leaders and institutions towards people and issues, it's not happening yet. So the environment, as it was mentioned here during the first panel, Albania has a population of 2.8 million inhabitants. The World Bank foresees that in 80 years it will be down to 800,000. So we risk with those figures that we might come in a day where we have more media operators and stations than the people actually living in the country.
Or maybe Albania will not exist at all.
Or maybe Albania will not exist at all in the form and in the conditions that we see it right now. The question is that the public service does have its own advantage, but also it has its own disadvantage. So the name of the game is political independence and financial independence. I mean, what's the magic formula to make that happen? The second thing is human resources. Human resources inherited from the, last century, previous century, 20th century. It's a problem. And also, we haven't addressed yet the question and the challenge, where are eyes of the people? Where people are looking right now? I can see in this room, they are looking at their mobile phones. Does public service have its own product for the young audiences and for the mobile devices? I think not yet. So do we have room? Plenty. Plenty because you can make programs which are not, cost-driven in the sense that to make a profit, by all means. And the other thing is that you have time now to digest in front of this, tsunami of information. You can not run the race to go first, but you can be most trusted, most reliable. And the trust is the currency that the public service is lacking. It's not the money.
Thank you, Lutfi. And now we move to Bosnia, where last year we have experienced really a very critical situation. The whole international community engaged in various initiatives to help Bosnia and Herzegovina to settle the financial crisis. Just to mention, I see Renate nodding, the European Federation of Journalists, the OSCE, the Council of Europe, the European Broadcasting Union. We all have organized several initiatives. Well, a little bit was moved and changed, but let's hear from Senada what is the situation with the financing.
Thank you, Ratka. Dobar dan, pozdrav svima. Ja sam inače novinarka po zanimanju I jako cijenim...
Journalist. This statement will improve the situation in this area and this specific case we spoke about. Besides these attacks on journalists, there are other topics is the position of the public emitters. 1 year ago, in the first half of June last year, in a dramatic moment, we had a very important conference for the public service of Bosnia-Herzegovina, and at that time some short-term and long-term decisions were made. One of short-term measures was that as soon as possible to be adopted the amendments on the law who will provide the financing of radio television of Bosnia and Herzegovina through the electronic bills for electric power. From 2005, the fee was collected through the telephone bill, fixed telephone bills, and from different reasons, the revenues were dramatically dropped. And at the summer last year, when the peak of the crisis were, we had only 20% of the revenue, which was accomplished in previous times and planned for the last part of this collection. So in these circumstances, this conference was held. Where are we today? What's the result? The result is that nevertheless, agreement for a short-term solution has been signed with one of three power plant operators. The other two, they didn't sign it. Did this improve the situation? Did it help? Yes, because it was a short-term infusion in order Radio Televisia of Bosnia and Herzegovina to survive, but for the long term, not investing long term in the future, I cannot say that we had a system who will stabilize in the long term, and it will open a perspective for the further development. It was not a development measure. It was just a short-term measure, and that was measure who will be active by the end of the year. We can speak something more detailed about some issues which are specific for Bosnia-Herzegovina, because we have three public broadcasts, two in the entities and one in the central level of Bosnia-Herzegovina, and in the moment related with our panel and some perspective and a conversation for a future. I personally think that the current Zakon law it dates from 2005, from a technological different environment, and for a different political environment of Bosnian society. So I think that we have a new law is a necessity who will respect the technological changes and political context. In order to do this, we need political will and a consensus in a society, but we have to agree with some central key points. One of these key points is, do we need a public service on the state level of Bosnia-Herzegovina? I think no, because I come from Radio Television of Bosnia-Herzegovina, but because I think that Bosnia-Herzegovina is a country who still suffers the consequences of the war 20 years ago. It's a country with not sufficient democratic institutions. It's a country where corruption represents a huge problem. So I think that in such a country, it's needed to have a state service who will have the function and the task to help in the democratization and the stabilization of the society. So this is the acceptance to maintain a public service. Then a stable financement is a key element for gaining political and financial independence. I'm speaking this from a perspective of a woman who works in these institutions, always looking for models a lot of models. They were full of a lot of conferences, and I think that based on this, we can have a solution which will be in the context of European standards, who will help the financing and who will obtain us with the political and financial independence. And in the directing structures, civil society organizations need to be engaged in order to have balance with political factors who had the main role in the government bodies. The program of the programming committee of Bosnia Herzegovina, they have 4 members. The regulatory agency for communications makes the procedures of the interviews, but the final decision when we submit the list to the parliament, so the parliament has the key role. So it's a different and not that good solution comparing with the first decision. Which with a minute we will speak about more about this. If you have something more about financing. So we are facing again with an open issue of financing, because this way of broadcasting fee expires in October. So there are elections on October, so there is no interest, no will to do something even in short term, or not to speak about the mid-term or long term. And without this, there is no proper development of the broadcast. It's a pity. I will give the floor to Adriana Bulatovic-Kadiev, because Montenegro has a special solution for the financing, not through the budget, but through GDP, gross domestic product.
But I would like to invite Adriana to share her experience. Just to remind everyone that this decision was prompted several years ago when there was a big crisis in the collection of the license fee. So, Adriana.
Dobar dan svima. Na samom početku želim da dam apsolutnu podršku koleginici Oliveri Lakić i da kažem da sam ponosna što je 10-ak zaposlenih iz kuće koje predstavljam, a broji 750, bilo juče na protestu da podrži koleginicu i da zatraži od države reakciju i konačno naprave...
To see the reaction and to implement the I can say that we are not satisfied with the solution. I'm included in the preparation of new law of the national emitter. That solution will be preserved, and that is 0.3 of GDP, which for Montenegro is like 13 million of euros, and it's not enough, but it's sufficient in order to be financially stable for the payment of the wages and we only have 3.5 million for investing in the program. According to me, the financial independence is even more important than the personally, editorial independence is more important to me, but for a position from I currently am, the more important is a financial independence, because I have right to be victimized for my idea, and my idea is independent service, but I have no right to ask this for 750 employees. The first question I'm facing is, can we speak about independent editorial policy if it is financed by the government? We have a dangerous thesis which states who give you the money, he will control how you spend it. But we can be controlled only by the citizens, because we receive money from the citizens. And in this case, the government is someone who just transmits the money. We had a contract and clear responsibilities for both us, for us and from them. And I think that this way of financing should remain furthermore. Why I'm saying this? Because from the country I come from, public service is perceived as a state television. There is another thesis which is very dangerous, is the participants of the parties in our program have to be proportional to the situation on the ground. But at that time we will be the partisan television. Who will at that time represent the interests of the minorities or other? And this is not only from point of view is not only from the ruling parties but from opposition parties as well. This is something we must not allow. We are responsible, and our guiding idea would have to be the same distance from the government, from the opposition, and from NGOs as well. I think that is sufficient. Since we are postoji jedna tema koja bih hteo da otvorim. Svedočimo dosta...
Come to power, and the first thing they want to do is to change the media law, because changing the law, they will change the governance of public service media. Very often this is done without proper assessment, without public debate, without even announcing. I think the case of our host here, announcing even and involving the public service media. So my first question to Professor Herbertin is, what are the European standards when governments initiate legal initiatives? And because we know the background, and what would you say about the European standards?
I mean, what to do in the situation when the European Union does not respect European standards? But I think the first thing is, if you are going to change the law, you have to analyze what is wrong with the existing law, and nobody does this. So usually there is only idea that we have to change the legislation. The second thing is that most of the time governments are looking for the ideas coming from the other countries. It's not just Slovenia. It's, for example, Slovenia is copying from Austria and we are not Austria. I don't know, the others are copying from Scandinavian countries, and we are not Scandinavian countries. And so I think the basic idea is to have an open public discussion, and I think also that the public service media should start the discussion. I think most of the time those working in the public service media, especially also the governing bodies of public service media, are behaving like they don't have a courage, you know, to put their ideas on the table with the politicians and to defend some ideas. So, for example, in Slovenia, with people who are working on these ideas, we are defending the idea that public service media should have a constant debate with citizens and all the interest groups which would like to take this discussion, and then through this discussion to make some list of most important ideas which should be in the law. So what is important, I don't know, Radka, it didn't change for 100 years. It's for the public, by the public, and from the public. So be independent, work in the interests of the public, and serving the public is not the easy thing. It's a very difficult thing to do, because at the end nobody is backing you up when you are in a difficult position like in Bosnia. And of course, you said in your core values, it's excellence. I think that also those working in the public service media should incorporate these special values. I think most of the people doesn't understand what does it mean to work for the public service media. It's something different than working for commercial media. It's a special ethical value, special ethos when you are producing a program and you are not like under pressure on any private interest at all. So the only goal of your work is to serve the public. And about European standards, I don't know. I think the European Commission is the last one who can defend the European standards. If you go to Poland, if you go to Denmark, if you go to Austria, Hungary, and so on and so on. So maybe the EBU should start the campaign on the European Union level to defend public service, the idea of public service media against European politicians working in the Brussels.
Thank you, Sandra. Thank you, Sandra. I would like to give the floor to Adriana, because this year we were witnessing a lot of changes in the Council of RTCG. So, Adriana, what do you think about how, what is our burden, how we deal with independence? What is up to us to ensure independence of our institutions and of our editorial?
Just a few things after Adriana. Okay.
When we're talking about the independence of a media, we are coming to a dead end. We ask ourselves if there is independent media at all. What we have to do is to create conditions for the public service to be in a certain condition state for independence. We have to do it throughout legislative. If there is no legal remedies, everything is for, I mean, we have to create a financial editorial policy at the end. Editorial politics depends on the people. If you have the right people on the right places, we can talk about independence of any kind of media. So also of independence of public service. What I would like to highlight is when we're talking about amendments of the law on broadcasters is to how are we going to choose the members of the councils, and which will be connected with the funds, and because, as I said, it really depends on who is in these bodies. There must be people who knows the matter and who have their own personal integrity, no matter where they come from. It does not. It should not happen what happened. Like we have changed the people violently in the members of the council. I have nothing against them, but I can see the big difference because what our current councils, they work like a mechanism of to impede what are. And I don't know how to feel differently, that they are telling about us that we are crime, immoral, criminals, that we are fighting special kind of war, and that we are even not an opposition to the government, but that we are opposition to the state. What I'm saying is we are not anyone's opposition. We are just here to work, to respect our professional principles and standards, because independent public service, that is the only way we can create it. What I want to say is it's not true that the independent, that editorial independence should be strictly put in order, and it is put in order by standards and by the rules how should a professional TV station should look like, and not allowing others to own everything from the program from the national broadcaster. We are the ones who create the service. What really hurt me that there was no reaction, neither from the council nor in the newspapers. There were no reaction from the public that we should take consideration about not to throw these big claims and not to create this environment to go through what our colleagues from media and VST went through, and because our current government don't like them. When I'm talking about like this, I'm not we as journalists, it's our blame to say we should respect more ourselves, our profession, and not to behave like a commodity. When one commodity is used to throw us away, it is our blame to take the responsibility, and the entire society should work on that, to understand that that whoever shoot Olivera Lakic, that she, no matter what, she is the citizen of Montenegro, and the reaction of the public should be very strict. It doesn't matter her name and surname. It means it is important that she is our citizen who works her job, and she could have died because someone likes her or doesn't like her. So and the country, the state, did not protect her. Thank you very much. I completely agree with you, because it is really important. The political pressure there is everywhere. Politicians like to control media, but it is up to us professionals how we are going to deal with this pressure. As we already said and told about importance of quality of the people who are in these councils. When Sandra Bašić-Horvatin, she advises us, she advises the legislature in Serbia, she advised them to take a new approach, and that the regulatory body to be included within the election of managerial council. Sandra, šta mislite o ovome, o legalnim promjenama?
There is a talk about this. What do you think about the quality of the council members, and especially the election of the council members?
Ja bih odgovorila vama, Andrijana. Ja se apsolutno slažem s time.
Ja se skroz... Oh, Bože. I completely agree with this. And especially, oh my God, I'm not getting the channel.
Or they are sort of chameleons of the high interests who are not visible at the first sight. So there should not be a formal conflict, but the problem could appear. I think that we, generally speaking, in our countries, we have a problem. Then we try with the law. We see the law as a religious text, and we expect that we will find the model when we will have such a criteria for the members of the council who will be morally ethic, and then we don't need a big law. We need to have a law in the first article. No, don't steal, don't lie, don't beat the journalists. So this is a matter of political culture which should be built by the whole society. And regarding Olivera, this went a step more further. It's not an issue of a journalist. I might not agree with her, but it's a matter of political battle. So we will say stop. You cannot go this way further. And now it appears for the journalists, the media, they have to establish borders by themselves. So you establish a border and you fight, and when you are aware that you cannot fight anymore, then you ask for help, or tell the citizens, sorry, dear people, but I really am public service, but I'm under huge pressure and I cannot do this anymore. So if you want to have an independent public service, please fight together with us to preserve this public service. So this is inside people. Every one of us should have that will to fight for a better media system. In the beginning, I said that this reminds me that echo chamber. When people speak, we are all convinced of something. And what's the problem? We know each other and we know everything. What's the solution? But actually, the people who are the problem, they're outside of these premises and they don't care about us. And my question is, what to do that everything which is inside this, in order this to be the dominant topic within society. So we must not let ourselves to be treated as a toy from the ruling parties. I don't have the answer actually for this, but I think that as a society we have to depend the public service, because at the end of the day this is the only public media which is not privatized yet. What do you think about the inclusion of the regulatory bodies for the election of the council? So if the parliament, there are people who think that all the journalists should be beaten, and the regulatory body thinks so, and the other committees that are sitting those kind of people, I think that we need to find the mechanism with which to those places should be assigned people with best qualifications, with personal integrity, who know what they will fight for, and will establish mechanisms to prevent this. That's the problem. Which people are named in this or submitted in this? And sometimes happens that some good people go through these people, but they are caught like a rabbit from the ears. I think that in Kosovo there is a discussion. Sada no.
And the quality of the representation in the council. And my understanding is that there are concerns about the trust actually also in the NVO sector. So for you, what would you say?
Okay. This is, I will have to repeat half of things that we just heard. This is about ethic, about culture, about political experience, about this kind of Balkan societies with many hates, many disbelief, many negative things, many negative from our history. So for myself, I do not accept the ideal solution. But what is a rational expectation is to have in the board of RTK concretely to have competent people. This is my only, how to say, what's upsetting me. Not good or bad, but competent people. To have people with whom you will have a chance to rationally talk about problem in media. Not making a political debate, not making a continuation of political debate in the offices of the RTK, which is not very good. But competent people, for example, from jurisdiction, from economy, from people who will help the management, who will find solution for the management if they do not have, for example, or who will be able to control management, to be there, to monitor management in rational and good sense. I don't know about NGOs. We have also this experience before, but personally, I do not believe that NGOs will send better people than political parties. We have the same experience, not best, not worst, the same quality in our board. Because, you know, if you say to people, okay, 3 NGOs, if they have one candidate or every NGO have a right to send 3 candidates, and they will be 300 candidates, and they will also go and filter in the parliament. The last time we had. So I don't like it. This is not transparent. Parties can form NGOs and NGOs to present like independence, and indeed they are not. We have this kind of experience. I believe, I have to say, the Parliament has essentially right to choose the board, because Parliament is our founder by the actual law, and so I don't see Parliament like enemy of the public transmitter in any case. In normal circumstances, we will have to be partners. So Parliament has to choose competent people, and we cannot be assured with the law. I agree. We cannot say competent people, because this is relative also the term, what is competent, what is not. But we have, to say, I have the best hope that the bad experiences will serve to make a new solution which will be better than they are now and that we had before.
Are there questions from the floor at this very point? Okay, then we would continue with Migena. I understand that you are now suggesting better representation of NGOs in your new legislation, and that people are actually happy with this suggestion.
Po Maqedonia nuk ka vuajtur ndonjëherë nga ligjet të këqija. Maqedonia gjithmonë ka pasur ligje të mira. Gjithmonë. Implementimi I tyre ka qenë, nuk është bërë asnjëherë në fakt, jo është bërë implementimi keq për sa I përket servisit publik. Gjithsesi që ka ndryshime edhe në kërkesën për përfaqësimin e shoqatave qeveritare pikërisht në Këshillin Drejtues dhe në Këshillin Programor të Radio Televizionit të Maqedonisë. Megjithatë, mua më shqetëson një fakt tjetër. Ka një javë të tërë që deputetët diskutojnë rreth ligjit për media dhe diskutojnë pikërisht televizionin e Maqedonisë. Problemi kryesor.
The main problem is which of the political parties will have the most of the numbers present in the parliament. In a country, can you listen? Can you hear? Can you hear? Everything okay? 1, 2. I'm speaking. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? So in a country where declaratively it fights a vandalism of the public service, according to me, it's a personal opinion, not of the TV I represent, is which of the political parties will have most of the control of the public service. We're talking about an independent service which is actually quite dependent from the daily politics, considering all the other organizations and organizations which show their own interest. Considering my opinion, as I can see, we cannot be so naive when it comes to the deciding of what is going to happen depending on whoever's going to finance you. Unfortunately, we have no idea whether the public TV can organize an unpaid program during the elections. So this is where we face the problem. Who wants what people are asking from us and what the politicians ask from us. Of course, the politicians will promise good salaries, and they will promise good advancements for the public service. Other organizations will always depend on how close the editor of the program is to the manager of the NGO, but unfortunately it's quite rare considering the people that used to work in RTV, and they were unfortunately minority, considering everything they had to go through. we have to mention that they knew the program, but they couldn't really do anything good, especially when they were trying to get an independent coverage of the elections. But unfortunately, they usually employ people that will get a much higher salary than the average, and they usually don't even want to know or learn how the public service should work without even taking into consideration of the necessities of the public service or how much the salary, how high the salary will be. It's necessary that we employ people that know the minimum knowledge of a work of a public service. That is a problem in our national service.
Thank you, Miguel. So now I would go to Bosnia and Herzegovina. 2 years ago, when we had training in Bosnia and Herzegovina, the Director General was saying, no problem, we could do investigative reporting, we could do everything because the politicians are even not interested in us, so we could be independent as much as we want. Senada, what do you think about the independence of your broadcaster? Let's start with DHRT and then...
Na koji kanal da je ovo? Na koji kanal ovo? Ne sluša se.
The mic. Tell her to
Kao što znate, Bosna i Hercegovina
system of public service media, they should have actually, according to the law, established a corporation which is an umbrella of 3 entity broadcasters. This corporation was not established. And then they have the BHRT, which is also a member of the EBU. They have the broadcasting service in the Republic of Srpska, and they have the broadcasting service of the Federation. That's why when I ask Senada about the independence, she's asking, are we talking about the system, or we talk of one of the entity broadcasters? Because obviously, there are many accusations that the entities broadcasters are under very strong political influence.
Pa ja treba da podsjetim, znači, evo kolega je malo prije spomenuo da je njih osnovao parlament.
It's a bit more specific situation. So we are founded with the second decision of the High Representatives, which is uncommon, very specific, and I believe that it was not without purpose. So the Parliament in the initial phase should be removed from the public sector and give the possibility for the public service to start as an independent. And this was the case in the first years. And it's not just an impression that it was a respectable medium and the service. The radio was one of the most heard for a period in Bosnia and Herzegovina. When these financial issues started, and then when the international community moved away, and I think that this kind of system of service in Bosnia and Herzegovina will not be even this kind if there was no support of the international community. And if the Bosnian politicians will have the main role, the things will be even worse. And the idea of the public service will be lost. Or at least we know what it should be. And I think that the Bosnia-Herzegovina power, which is only nationally focused, ethnically focused, if they have been, I think that when the international committee moved away, space was opened from the officials of Bosnia-Herzegovina, which we spoke about the governing bodies. The parliament gained a much more important role than previously. I don't think that It is not absolutely good solution, not the regulatory agency, but in the specific conditions in Bosnia-Herzegovina, I think that this is a better solution, although it doesn't mean with the regulatory agency that it's completely independent, but nevertheless a better solution than the decision to be brought from the parliament, because Bosnian parliament will not elect the best people. They will rather elect the people who will represent their political or ethnic options. So when the international community went away, a space was released for the more policy, and this financial crisis became. So let's be open. We are moving away from the idea of the independent media service. The assignment of the editors-in-chief go into this direction I'm speaking about, and I think it will be extremely important, and we can influence this in the public service. The professionals, quality people should be the key point. We cannot influence in the governing bodies because the decisions are made somewhere else. But for the key editors, I think we can have influence, and I think that the professional criteria should be absolutely dominant. It is clear that the service, as it's radio television of Bosnia-Herzegovina, has to take care about the ethnic balance. But if we offer the people the bad information, no one will oppose. So the people want the quality. They want an open media, public medias. They want to hear the different opinions, and this is our obligation. This is our task, and we should seek for the exit here, and not of this absolute ethnic balance, which is in Bosnia became the priority #1, even more than after the war, before the war or during the war. And I think this does not lead to the progress. So within the House, we have to fight for the better professional standards. We have to fight for professionals in the key roles, positions, and at the same time, we have to lead these processes as financing, independence, etc. I think that we have a worse situation in this regard as well. And Radka knows that in some initial phases, the radio television of Bosnia and Herzegovina it's a bit better, stays a bit better.
OSCE report about the coverage of the elections in Albania were quite positive about the public service broadcaster RTS. What is your opinion? Is there any positive step forward? Are we going to gain more trust? Traditionally, RTS has a very low audience share. What are your thoughts in this?
With all due respect, the OSCE word is not the word of the God. I mean, yes. It's a good thing that they said what they said, but personally I'm not pleased because balancing politics, it's balancing the, two bad things. Yeah. It's not about politics and leaders, it's about people and issues. And the public service does not have many friends. But it should strive to gain only one friend, the public. So, and on the other hand, we should be self-critical. It's not that all professionals, all wise, smart journalists are working in the PBS. On contrary. So, and here is why I disagree with the unions. Because you have to be up to the standards of the job. I mean, are you serving the public? No. And then complain all day about politicians, from morning till night. It's easy said than done. But there are good possibilities if you change the paradigm. So it's not about leader politics, institutions, it's about people, it's about issues. And it's gaining the trust little by little. So it's not talking about the revolution. It cannot be done. And we should take advantage of what you mentioned before, Bosnian case. You should strive for your independence and quality once the attention is away. Because you have low audience, small audiences, and you are not at the height of the cyclone. It's not an easy battle, but it's worth fighting.
It's actually a very good word for closing our panel. Maybe just one word, each of you, your recommendation for what is the homework we should do? What is your suggestion for the strengthening of public service media? And if there would be questions from the panel after each one says one word or two words. Another.
Avoid the political list. If you want any explanations, I will give them after the conference.
Impossible to say in one word, but I believe that public broadcasters are, how to say, in the heart of the national interest of every state in this region, especially. We are small countries, we have small cultures, we are really small languages, and we need public broadcasters. Not only to make TV, to make business, to make audience, but to preserve our cultural and ethnical and social and historical identity. Because of that, I believe in public broadcasting more than in commercial businesses. Thank you.
Protiv politizacije možemo se boriti samo
against politicization. We can fight by creating quality program, and that is how we are going to gain the trust of the audience.
On the public service program.
Are there any really urgent questions?
Yes, sir. You can just...
We are above the time, but two questions, Nasser and then Mikhail Yovovich.
Насер Сельмани, мачна е дебатата секогаш.
The debate about the public service is always a difficult one. I think there is no better test, but no better way to test as the political will of a government but to face it with a sincere reform of the public service. In Macedonia, we have certain improvements in selecting the people, which is now depoliticized. However, the financial model does not ensure independence of the public service. Let me give you an example. If these legal amendments go through, the public service will have 5 million euros less, and we have to open two more television and one more radio channel. And I tell the government, I don't understand your math. To produce more and better quality program with less money, that's impossible. So now the question is this politics, or are the people that work in the public service to blame? As a society, we can't accept that we are not mature. We don't have a critical mass to fight for some basic values. Those who fight against politicization of institutions are part of the politicization. So, in the public service, you have people who served Gruevski in the past, and now they are the biggest criticists of Gruevski. We cannot reform the public broadcaster with such people. And one more point, please. It's impossible to have a serious reform of the public service with through political agreements between the party in power and those in opposition. Our opposition had 65 amendments on the law, and none of these amendments were the financing model. If someone needs to be interested for the public service to be strong, is the opposition, but they didn't manage to write a single amendment for its improvement. And I have no other answer but that we are immature societies and that we will need some time to mature them in democracy-wise. We are not fighting for the basic democratic values.
Hvala Ratka. Ja ću nekoliko stvari po nekoliko riječi.
I believe that funding of public service, at least in Montenegro, is completely fine, with one exception. Because of the public service that was in the hands of the governing party, which does not mean if it was other party, it was not going to be in their hands. It means that funding from the budget is the best thing. Otherwise, I believe that we would bankrupt, and I would suggest one change, and that the proof for that is what happened to the public service. I'm against that, for the public service to have a marketing department. The one that I suggest that public service have, for example, the money, for example, that they gain from the marketing department to get the same sum from the budget in the last 5 years. From what we heard is that the marketing budget has been reduced at the moment when they have decided to become a real service, because before that they have become a megaphone of the ruling party. And that is what happens to all professional media in Montenegro, and happens to all of them who criticize the ruling party and the government. They have lost the marketing department because the government was one of the biggest, those who... So we have to know how much the country, how much of the budget goes in it, and no one could affect them. And one more thing to add. Okay, actually, the question I would like to hear the answer from Ms. Horvatin. She said that the real people should come, but how should we do that? In the assembly, we know what's going on in the assembly. We know what happens in the regulatory bodies. How can we expect for the real people when most of the people who should come there, it's not in anyone's interest except for the public? How to create a mechanism to get to these people? Like in the Council of Montenegro were people like that, and they even have the support from the private and commercial televisions. They have their support. Even it was against the interest of this television for them to remain as a public service. Okay, I'm finishing. So the question for Ms. Horvatin and for Ms. Kadia, this is another question. If it's in a situation when DPS has a ready mechanism to change you, I don't believe that it should affect you, but whether can journalists feel the pressure that they have now, that they have some self-censorship, even those who now begin to work as they should have up until now? Will that in any kind affect them? I will try to answer this question. You know, it's not easy to govern with the House, where before they threat us, you know, before the beginning of a session, other media, all the time, other medias, private medias, they're writing about us that we're dealing bad, that we're corrupted, and that they're trying to come to certain data, and out of that to make a fair. If you have check-ins from special prosecution or general prosecution, you cannot expect complete support of the employees. It's normal that these people feel some kind of fear, and that they make step backs, and they're thinking what will happen if someone else came in their place, what will happen then. And that is what I'm trying to answer to the colleague of Macedonia. When the ruling parties shift, we're not supposed, and we should not change the employees. We should only have to tell them that they should work on their clear conscience, not to think whether their work is good to Andriana, Marco, Janko, or anyone from the people who were or are in the position I am, or to think about whether they were praised by the president, prime minister, or the president of some opposition party. I believe those are the most dangerous beliefs, opinions. We should support and endorse people who would like to build an example of professionals, and to give them the chance, and there will be the engine who will take all the rest with them. It may sound very utopistic when I really believe that by professionalism we can fight for the public service to have to become a mother service to all services in Montenegro, and after that everyone can choose to see or listen on some other commercial media. What Andriana just said, oh, I would really like you to become the director of our public service. I would pay twice the fee. There is no guarantee that if the parliament elect, or maybe agency, that they will choose the right people. What anyone can do is to create certain mechanism which you will impede not the right people to come in these positions. I believe that many people who are in the public service, that they may make some kind of defender to expect from the law itself that will will include all the mechanisms who will impede this. It's completely illusory. I have one question for Ms. Horvatin. How to work when the council doesn't want to adopt your program production programs, I am not saying that they're ideal, but they are stating and they're identical with the previous production programs. Even some of them, they have some additional parts that made them even more qualitative, but we have come to a situation that they don't want to accept it, and we have to fulfill everything that we have obliged to do previously. I know it's not easy. What to do in a situation like that? It follows us up that according to new law, you will have to have a special annex where if they do not adopt this plan without grounded argumentations, that plan proceeds. Thank you.
And thank you very much for all your participation.
We will have a quick coffee break, but please, in order to give due time to the last panel today, please be back promptly 10 minutes. You have 10 minutes for coffee break.